The pen hovered in the air for 3 long seconds. Around the glass-walled office, no one breathed. The lawyer's hand trembled. The assistant froze mid-step. Even the city skyline beyond the CEO's windows seemed to pause, as if the world itself was waiting for the ink to fall. Then the CEO reached across the table, grabbed the pen from the single dad's shaking fingers, and said quietly, "Marry me." The words didn't make sense at first. They floated in the room like a bad translation, like something overheard in a dream. The single dad blinked, convinced he'd misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" An hour earlier, he had been sitting in a hospital corridor, staring at a fluorescent light that flickered like it might give up at any moment, just like him. Now he was in the office of the most powerful woman in the city, being proposed to over a contract that would sell one of his kidneys. His name was Daniel Harper, and until 3 weeks ago, his biggest problem had been finding someone to watch his daughter while he worked double shifts. He was a warehouse supervisor by day, a rideshare driver by night, and a father every second in between. Lily was 6 years old. She loved strawberry milk, hated socks, and believed her dad could fix anything. Except this. The diagnosis came fast and cruel. Acute kidney failure. Genetic. Untreatable without a transplant. The doctor had been gentle, the way people are when they know they're about to shatter your life. "She'll need a new kidney within months," he'd said. Without it, he hadn't finished the sentence. He didn't need to. Daniel had nodded, thanked him, and walked out holding Lily's hand like the ground might disappear if he let go. He was not a compatible donor. And the transplant list was long. Too long. So Daniel did what desperate parents do. He sold his car, then his tools, then the watch his late wife had given him on their wedding day. When that wasn't enough, he stopped sleeping and started searching. That was how he found the number. The ad had been posted in a shadowy corner of the internet, wrapped in vague language and untraceable promises. Fast. Discreet. Life-saving. He stared at it for hours before calling. 2 days later, a man in a gray suit met him at a cafe and slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract. Clean. Legal-looking. Terrifying. 1 kidney, the man said calmly. "You'll live. She'll live. Everyone wins." Daniel's hands had shaken as he flipped the pages. The payment would cover Lily's surgery, her aftercare. Enough to breathe again. The risk was his. He signed. Or rather, he was about to. Because before the final approval, there was one last meeting. A formality, they said. A private investor. Someone who funded medical initiatives and insisted on reviewing high-risk cases. That was how Daniel ended up here. And that was how he met Eleanor Blackwood. Eleanor Blackwood didn't look like the kind of woman who made emotional decisions. She was composed in a way that felt almost unreal. Tailored charcoal suit, silver hair pulled into a low knot, eyes sharp enough to miss nothing. She was the CEO of Blackwood Health Systems, a name stamped on hospitals, research labs, and glossy magazine covers. She'd been silent for most of the meeting, listening as the lawyer explained the procedure. The risks. The waivers. Daniel hadn't looked at her once. He couldn't afford to. If he let himself think about the danger, the pain, the fact that Lily might grow up without him. He focused on the pen. "This is the final authorization," the lawyer said. "Once you sign, we proceed." Daniel picked up the pen. That was when Eleanor finally spoke. "Why?" The room turned toward her. "Why?" she repeated, her gaze locking onto Daniel. "Are you willing to die for this?" "I'm not," he said hoarsely. "I'm willing to live, minus a kidney." Her eyes didn't soften. "You have a daughter," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And if something goes wrong?" He swallowed. "Then, at least she has a chance." Silence pressed down on them. Eleanor stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city for a long moment. When she turned back, something had changed. Not weakness. Something sharper. More personal. "My husband died waiting for a transplant," she said quietly. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "I built an empire to stop this kind of desperation," she continued. "And yet here you are, about to carve yourself up because the system failed you." She stepped closer to the table. Daniel's hand hovered over the paper. That was when she reached out, grabbed the pen from his fingers, and said, "Marry me." Everyone froze. Daniel stared at her, stunned. "I don't understand." "You will," she said. "But first, put the pen down." He did. And somewhere, in a children's hospital room across the city, Lily slept peacefully, unaware that her life, and her father's, were about to change forever. The room didn't erupt. It didn't buzz with whispers or gasps. It went dead silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat, loud and unruly, like it doesn't belong there. Daniel half expected someone to laugh. To say this was some cruel test. A hidden camera. Anything but what it sounded like. But Eleanor Blackwood was still standing in front of him, hand resting lightly on the table, her expression calm, almost businesslike. "Excuse me," the lawyer finally said, clearing his throat. "Ms. Blackwood, I believe." "I know exactly what I said," Eleanor interrupted without looking at him. Daniel pushed his chair back slightly, as if distance might help him understand. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she replied. "You're willing to destroy your own body to save your child. That tells me more than resumes and background checks ever could." "That's not a reason to get married," he said, voice cracking despite his effort to keep it steady. Eleanor's gaze softened, not in a romantic way, but in something heavier, something burdened. "It's not romance," she said. "It's a solution." 10 minutes later, Daniel was sitting alone in a side office, a glass of water untouched in front of him, trying to stop his hands from shaking. "Marry me." The words replayed in his mind like a malfunctioning alarm. He thought of Lily, of her small fingers curled around his when she slept, of the way she said "daddy" like it was a promise. He didn't have the luxury of pride, or confusion, or outrage. He had a deadline. The door opened softly. Eleanor stepped inside and closed it behind her. "No lawyers," she said. "No contracts. Just the truth." Daniel looked up. "Then explain." She sat across from him, folding her hands. For the first time, she looked tired. "My husband, Thomas, was a good man," she began. "Brilliant. Kind. Stubborn in the ways that mattered." She paused. "He needed a kidney. We were wealthy, powerful, connected. None of it mattered." Daniel listened, heart heavy. "He waited 18 months, she continued. "By the time a match appeared, it was too late." "I'm sorry," Daniel said quietly. "So am I." She inhaled. "After he died, I vowed no one else would be forced into your position. I poured billions into reform. Transplant acceleration. Priority pathways." Her mouth tightened. "But the system still values paperwork over people." Daniel frowned. "So, how does marrying me fix that?" Eleanor met his eyes. "Because once you are legally my family, you are immediately covered under Blackwood Health's executive medical authority." The words took a moment to sink in. "You mean," Daniel whispered, "Lily would receive a fully funded transplant within days," Eleanor said. "No waiting list. No illegal contracts. No risk to you." Daniel's breath hitched. Hope surged so fast it hurt. "And you?" he asked. "I gain a husband in name only," she said evenly. "No expectations beyond legality. No deception. After the crisis is over, we can dissolve the marriage quietly, if that's what you want." He stared at her, overwhelmed. "Why me?" "Because you are ready to sign," she said. "And because I need someone the board can't accuse me of exploiting." That landed heavier than anything else. "You're using me," he said. "Yes," she admitted. "And you're using me too." Daniel leaned back, eyes burning. This was insane. "And yet, people will talk," he said. "They'll say you bought a husband." "They already say worse," Eleanor replied. He thought of Lily again. The ticking clock. The impossible choice. "What if I say no?" he asked. Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Then I'll respect it. And I'll still stop this contract." Relief and fear collided inside him. Outside the room, the machinery of power was already moving. Assistants whispered. Calls were made. A canceled procedure rippled through hidden channels. And somewhere else in the building, a junior executive was watching the security feed with narrowed eyes, someone who had been counting on that illegal operation staying very, very quiet. By evening, the news leaked. A single photo hit social media first. Eleanor Blackwood standing beside an unknown man, her hand hovering near his arm, a hospital logo blurred in the background. The caption was simple. CEO Blackwood engaged? Sources say sudden marriage looms. Daniel's phone exploded. Unknown numbers. Messages. Missed calls. What did you just get yourself into? He muttered. Eleanor glanced at his screen. Into hope, she said. And into a storm. That night, Daniel sat beside Lily's hospital bed, holding her hand as machines hummed softly around them. Daddy, she murmured sleepily. I'm here, he whispered. She smiled. I knew you'd fix it. Daniel looked at her tiny face, then out the window where the city lights flickered like distant stars. For the first time since the diagnosis, he allowed himself to believe she might live. But he also knew nothing this big ever came without a cost. The wedding happened 48 hours later. No flowers. No guests. No white dress or walking down an aisle. Just a courthouse, a judge with tired eyes, and a line of reporters held back by security as if the building itself might collapse under the weight of rumors. Daniel stood beside Eleanor in a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit his shoulders, his palms damp, his heart racing harder than it had the day Lily was born. This is not how marriages start, he muttered under his breath. Eleanor didn't look at him. It's how rescues do. The judge cleared his throat. Do you, Eleanor Blackwood? Yes, she said instantly. Daniel swallowed as the words turned toward him. He thought of Lily's labored breathing, of the contract he hadn't signed, of the scalpel that would never touch his body. I do, he said. The gavel struck. Just like that, Daniel Harper, warehouse supervisor, rideshare driver, single father, became the legal husband of one of the most powerful women in the country. And the cameras went wild. By noon, every major network was running the story. Billionaire CEO marries stranger in emergency ceremony. Romance or cover-up? Questions swirl. Who is Daniel Harper? Daniel watched it all from a small conference room at Blackwood Health, Lily asleep on a couch behind him, unaware she had just become the center of a corporate hurricane. They're calling you a gold digger, Daniel said quietly, scrolling headlines. They always do, Eleanor replied. Today it just has a face. The board meeting began with frost in the air. 12 executives on a video wall, every expression tight. This is unacceptable, one snapped. You've compromised the company. You've abused executive authority, another said. Marrying a patient's parent? Eleanor folded her hands. I married my husband. A husband you met 2 days ago. Yes. Daniel sat silent, feeling like an exhibit rather than a man. This will trigger an investigation, a board member warned. Government audits. Criminal scrutiny. Eleanor leaned forward. Good. I welcome it. The meeting ended without resolution, but not without consequences. The transplant authorization went through that afternoon. Priority. Fully funded. Immediate. Daniel cried for the first time in weeks when the doctor confirmed it. She is a donor, the doctor said. Surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Daniel collapsed into a chair, sobbing into his hands. Eleanor stood quietly nearby, eyes distant, as if bracing for something unseen. That night, the threat arrived. It came as a handwritten note slipped under Eleanor's penthouse door. Stop digging or the girl pays. Daniel found it first. His blood ran cold. This is about the illegal network, Eleanor said grimly after reading it. They've been operating inside my system for years. You're telling me this marriage put a target on Lily? Daniel demanded. Eleanor met his gaze. It put a spotlight on corruption. And criminals don't like light. Security doubled instantly. Guards outside Lily's hospital room. Private elevators locked down. Routes changed. But fear doesn't respect security. Daniel sat beside Lily all night, afraid to blink. At dawn, she was wheeled into surgery. Eleanor stood beside him in the corridor, both of them silent as the doors closed. Hours passed. Every step echoed. Every phone vibration felt like a gunshot. When the surgeon finally emerged, smiling, Daniel nearly collapsed again. "She's stable," the doctor said. "The kidney is functioning beautifully." Daniel laughed and cried at the same time, gripping Eleanor's arm without thinking. She didn't pull away. But victory was short-lived. As Lily slept in recovery, federal agents arrived. "We need to speak with you, Ms. Blackwood," one said. About illegal organ procurement. The board had moved fast. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who had almost bought Daniel's kidney were deciding their next move. Daniel looked at Eleanor. "You said this was a solution." "It still is," she said. "But now it's also a war." She took a breath, eyes hardening. "And I don't intend to lose." The power went out at 2:17 a.m. Not gradually. Not with a flicker. 1 second, Lily's heart monitor hummed steadily in the dim hospital room. The next, the lights died. The monitor went black, and the silence that followed felt violent. Daniel was on his feet instantly. "Lily," he whispered, heart slamming against his ribs. Emergency lights snapped on a moment later, bathing the room in red. Outside, hurried footsteps echoed, voices sharp with urgency. Eleanor burst in seconds later, her phone pressed to her ear. "Lock down the floor," she said coldly.
Now.
Daniel knew, without needing to ask, that this wasn't a coincidence. 24 hours earlier, Eleanor had handed federal investigators everything. Internal emails, financial trails, names of surgeons and brokers embedded deep inside Blackwood Health. She'd exposed an illegal organ pipeline that preyed on desperation, people like Daniel. The note under the door had been a warning. This was the response. Security guards filled the hallway, weapons visible but lowered. Nurses moved fast, switching Lily to backup power. "She's stable," one said. But someone tried to override the system. Daniel's legs nearly gave out. Eleanor's jaw tightened. They won't get near her again. But even as she said it, her phone buzzed. A video. She opened it, and her face drained of color. Daniel saw it too. It was Eleanor's penthouse, ransacked. Drawers torn out, glass shattered, and a message burned into the screen. One more move. By morning, the city was in chaos. News outlets had picked up whispers of a federal raid, a CEO under investigation, and a mystery groom no one could place. Daniel sat in a secure waiting room while lawyers argued outside in hushed, furious tones. "I didn't sign up for this," Daniel said quietly when Eleanor finally sat across from him. "You signed up to save your daughter," she replied. "The rest came with me. That doesn't mean Lily should pay for it." Eleanor looked at him for a long time. "You're right." She slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" "An annulment," she said. "Immediate. Quiet. It removes you and Lily from my legal sphere." Daniel's chest tightened. "And you?" "I stay," she said simply. "They want leverage. I won't give it to them." "No," he said sharply. "I'm not walking away while you fight alone." "This isn't a debate," she said. "It's protection." He stared at the papers, then shoved them back. "You already saved my child," he said. "Now let me stand with you." For the first time, Eleanor's composure cracked. "Daniel," she said softly, "they kill people." "So do kidney failures," he shot back. "And we beat that." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Eleanor nodded once. "Then we finish this together." The trap was set that afternoon. Eleanor leaked false data, an offshore account, a secret meeting, bait for the network that believed she was cornered. They took it. At 9:42 p.m., federal agents moved in on 3 locations simultaneously. But the network struck back faster than expected. Daniel was walking back from the cafeteria when 2 men stepped into his path. "You should have signed the contract," one said calmly. Daniel didn't have time to run. The world exploded into motion, guards shouting, someone tackled, a gun clattering across the floor. Daniel hit the ground hard, breath knocked from his lungs. When it was over, the men were in cuffs, and Daniel was shaking. That night, Eleanor sat beside Lily's bed, watching her sleep. "I almost lost everything," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. You almost saved everyone. She looked at him, really looked at him. This was supposed to be a transaction, she said. I didn't expect this. Neither did I, he replied. Outside the room, agents waited with warrants and indictments. Inside, something fragile and real was forming. But one final threat remained. Because the man who had funded the illegal network, the one no one could touch, had just boarded a private jet. And he was headed straight for the city. The private jet landed at dawn. No press. No lights. Just a quiet runway and a man who had never once been told no. Victor Hale stepped onto the tarmac, adjusted his cufflinks, and smiled. He had built his fortune on invisible suffering, on people who signed contracts with shaking hands and parents who loved their children more than their own bodies. And he did not like surprises. By the time he reached the city, Eleanor Blackwood was already waiting. Not in a courtroom, not behind lawyers. In the old transplant wing of Blackwood General, the first building she'd ever funded. Daniel stood beside her, hands clenched, heart pounding. This is where my husband died, Eleanor said as Victor approached. I thought it was fitting. Victor laughed softly. Sentimental. You always were. You tried to kill a child, Eleanor said flatly. I tried to protect an investment, Victor replied. You made it personal. He turned to Daniel. You could have been rich. All you had to do was sign. Daniel stepped forward. All you had to do was be human. Victor's smile faded. Federal agents emerged from the shadows. You're too late, Victor said. My lawyers. Eleanor lifted a small recorder. Already heard everything. The arrest was quiet. No dramatic chase. No gunfire. Just handcuffs clicking shut on a man who had never believed they would. The trials took months. The network collapsed. Surgeons testified. Bank accounts froze. Eleanor resigned as CEO during the investigation. The board expected her to crawl back when it was over. She didn't. I'm done building systems that forget people, she told the press. Daniel moved into a small house near Lily's school. Eleanor visited often. Too often to call it coincidence. One afternoon, as Lily played in the yard, she looked up at them. Are you still married? She asked. Daniel and Eleanor exchanged a glance. I don't know, Daniel said honestly. Lily frowned. I like it when you're together. That night, Eleanor stayed for dinner. And then for breakfast. A year later, Daniel stood in a very different place. Not a courthouse. A garden. There were flowers this time. And laughter. And Lily in a yellow dress scattering petals far too enthusiastically. Eleanor walked toward him, not in a power suit, but in something soft and human. This time, the proposal wasn't about saving a life. It was about choosing one. When they said, I do, no cameras flashed. But everyone there knew. Sometimes, the most powerful marriages begin as acts of mercy. And sometimes, saving a child saves two broken adults too. The end.